I'm Pat Torres. Welcome to The Story. We're starting out in downtown Portland at Fire Station 1 because we're getting a peek behind the scenes at the internal struggles with the innovative program called Portland Street Response. The idea is to send workers from Portland Street Response on 911 calls when police are not needed. But they've had some growing pains. They're part of the Fire Bureau, so when the retiring fire chief agreed to sit down and talk about them, well, we knew that would be our big story tonight. Sara Boone is Portland's retiring fire chief. She's been quite the pioneer. First black woman firefighter hired by the Bureau and now first black fire chief. She's been at the Bureau for 28 years. She rarely gives interviews, so I was thrilled to get the chance to sit down and chat with her about her career. If you missed that report on Monday, by the way, no problem. We posted it on our KGW YouTube channel. We also talked about Portland Street Response, which we did not show you on Monday, but we are going to get into tonight. Portland Street Response has been in the news quite a bit with some internal issues lately. It was launched back in February of 2021. The idea is to send trained workers to calls for mental health issues where police are not really needed. It's better for the police and often better for those in crisis. The team is made up of a paramedic and a mental health worker. They are dispatched by 911 operators to these non-criminal calls. A recent Portland State University study found that over the last year, its second in existence, Portland Street Response handled 7,418 calls as more were funneled their way. That led to a 3.5% reduction in the total number of calls that would have been sent to Portland police. It also resulted in police going on 19% fewer non-emergency calls. People who were helped by the team gave them high ratings, 4.8 out of possible 5, so most are very happy. Portland Street Response has also helped place 10 people into permanent housing. One of the study authors, though, says more needs to be done, says the group really needs more oversight by professionals in the mental health field.
That they need more robust delivery of clinical supervision and people who are trained and licensed clinical providers, clinical mental health providers, who can provide them with the support they need. When they're in the field, they know they can call someone to provide that in the moment support and guidance.
The group is part of the Fire Bureau, at least for the moment. That's in part because the commissioner who pushed for the program, Joanne Hardesty, was in charge of the Bureau at the time. She's no longer a commissioner. It also helped the group get access to 911 calls, according to its website. Now, currently, there's a bit of an argument over what direction Street Response should take. Last winter, Renee Gonzalez, the new city commissioner in charge of the Fire Bureau, told Street Response workers to stop handing out tents and tarps to homeless people due to the fire risk. The PSU report found they'd given out more than 2,200 sleeping bags, blankets, or tents. Gonzalez also ordered Street Response to be present when city contractors are sweeping homeless camps, to be available if someone goes into crisis. It's something that several current workers have objected to. The commissioner recently told us he likes the program, but that its mission needs to be more clearly defined.
You know, we're all looking at a really difficult humanitarian crisis on our street, the homeless problem. And we're just trying to figure out what's Portland Street Response's piece of that equation. And certainly someone in mental distress needs non-police intervention. There's food needs, there's clothing needs, there's sometimes Narcan, much less long-term behavioral health, and shelter, eventually housing. Portland Street Response can only kind of fill one part of that, of a larger, solution.
So it's against that backdrop that I thought, what a treat to get insights from the outgoing fire chief, Sara Boone. It seemed like it had, it had kind of a big splash start, and then now maybe is going through some troubled waters.
Well, I think with any new program, any pilot, any new program, it can start off with a bang. That's one impression. And it can start, and you can get further along the line, and then you're going to see other challenges. And I think where we are today is you can either be so focused and militant on one way and the only way that you lose sight of, here are the things that we didn't even think about in the beginning, because you couldn't even think about them. But they are, these are things that we have to look at right now before we go forward. And I don't want to get too specific, but I think, you know, this is something that Chief Gillespie has taken over and looked at. And I think it really is what is within this structure that we are missing when it really comes to building a strong foundation.
Chief Boone points out there is much more to an organization than the part that we, the public, see. She agrees Portland Street Response sounds like a great idea, but says it's lacking the behind-the-scenes structure to really make it work long-term.
Not just looking at the outward-facing service, but what's going on when it comes to the foundation and the support. And do you have the resources? Do you have the training? Are those policies in place? And do you have teams that can support the expansion of what we're trying to provide out in the streets? And we don't.
Chief Boone says Portland Street Response was unique and successful because it used input from those they were helping to design the program. But now she's concerned, as the commissioner is, that it has lost its way and needs to pick a focus.
But I think where we're also at is, are we in competition? Are we doing duplication? Are there things that, you know, we've lost and strayed?
Is that like you talk about handing out the blankets and the tents and that kind of stuff, or no?
Well, or looking at the iteration is if this is what that is, you know, is the Fire Bureau the right bureau to home for it? And it definitely is not the mechanism of distribution if it is going to be in the Fire Bureau. Right. So where are they aligning with? And again, are you aligning as a 911 first responder, or are you aligning with a network when it comes to providing social services, when it comes to crisis intervention, and when it comes to connecting to resources? I don't know I don't know. It's a little bit of everything. But I think that's where everybody needs to have that discussion and be like, are we actually going to be mobile crisis, highly technical skilled, that augments, I would say, or supplements that you can send, because fire and police, right? I can't speak for police, so I'll just speak for fire, right? Many of those calls were sending police because you didn't have...
There's nobody else.
There's nobody else,
yeah.
Right? So if you do have the mental health responder, a clinician, that highly skilled, and it is, we're sending you in to deal with this crisis, great. What happens after that? Or you go back in service, then on to the next call. If we want to be social services, where we're distributing, you know, clothing and food boxes, and that's a whole...
And how are you any different than all the nonprofits that are doing that?
And that's okay,
yeah.
But it has to be coordinated and under some sort of structure that makes it efficient.
Thanks to Chief Boone for talking so openly about that. Portland Street Response has a budget of roughly $10 million for this fiscal year, which started a few days ago. OPB reports it is mostly made up of one-time funding. So what's your take on Portland Street Response? Do you like their mission? What do you think they should focus on? Should they be handing out food and shelter, or doing something else? Maybe nothing at all? It's your opinion, but share it with us, will you? Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. By the way, if you missed our first segment with Chief Boone on Monday because you were out of town for the holiday or something silly like that, you can watch it right now on the KGW YouTube channel. Here's what other viewers had to say about that.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that article on Sara Boone. All the women firefighters have had to work so hard just to be respected in the fire department, and oh my gosh, the things that they've probably seen. And I hope Sara Boone has enjoyment in retirement because they've given her life to the fire department, and we owe her so much. I just totally respect her. What a role model.
Yeah, that's a nice message. Mike wrote in, a personal commitment with dedication exemplified by the retiring Portland's fire chief constitutes an unparalleled achievement. Kudos and gratitude for such a lifetime gift. May she have a rewarding retirement. And we got this from Kim. Sara was very articulate, and I appreciate her point of view about work and family. Not everyone can admit that they can't do both. I wish her much happiness in her retirement. Here's how you can find our content, by the way. It's updated every single day. Head to the KGW YouTube channel and scroll down to The Story on KGW. From there, you can watch individual segments or the entire show whenever you find the time. And we know you'll find it lots. If YouTube's not your cup of tea, no problem. Be sure to check out our streaming app on Roku and Amazon Fire. It's called KGW Plus. Add the app to your home screen so you can watch our content anytime. Our full episodes replay several times throughout the evening to fit your busy schedule. Yesterday was the hottest day ever recorded on Earth. And we're certainly feeling it here in the Northwest with another heat wave upon us and everyone bracing for wildfire danger. Matt Zaffino is making an appearance on The Story to talk about what's going on. That's coming up next. We're keeping an eye on the Tunnel 5 fire. It's burning on the Washington side of the gorge in Skamania and Klickitat counties. The fire started burning earlier this week. It's grown to more than 500 acres now. At least 10 homes have been destroyed. And SR 14 is closed in that area. No word yet on what started the fire. It's about 5% contained today. This time of year, wind and humidity often play a huge role in what happens next with wildfires, which is why we're turning to our weather expert for a glimpse of the future there in the gorge. Here's Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino, and I understand a change is coming for those fire conditions in the gorge?
Yeah, that's right, Pat. You know, hot weather and very low humidity, not great for fighting fire, but wind is worse. We'd rather have hot, dry weather with no wind. then really strong winds and cooler temperatures because the wind, as you can imagine, just moves the fire. So here's what we're dealing with right now. Our camera closest to that fire in Hood River out in the Dalles, looking back towards Hood River, and you can see the haze, and it's hot. 100 degrees in the Dalles, 10% humidity, similar conditions over in Hood River and in Underwood. But there is a change on the way. Look at the winds being reported in the Dalles in the gorge right now. Calm in Hood River, basically calm in the Dalles, calm out to the east too. That is going to change in a very large way starting tomorrow. Now, we've got a fire weather warning for the Willamette Valley as well until later on tonight because of the hot weather. Will cool off tomorrow. Also, air quality issues with the smoke that came down from Canada last night. But back to the wind in the gorge. This is our forecast for the winds over the next 48 hours. When we put numbers to this, here's Carson, here's Hood River, right here where you see the color of the blue, that's roughly where Underwood is, and watch what happens as we go through time. We'll stop this tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. The winds are still pretty light. They're out of the west, 6 to 9 miles an hour. But by tomorrow afternoon, look at this. They're sustained 14 to 20, and that's not the gust. That's just the sustained wind. So that is problematic as those winds increase tomorrow morning. Pardon me. And tomorrow afternoon, we're getting gusts, or not gusts, sustained winds of 25 miles an hour in Hood River and Underwood. So this is the change that we're worried about, Pat, with these strong westerly winds. Now, it's possible that because the fire was burning in a certain way that this could push these winds, could push the fire back over areas that already burned, but there's a lot of hope involved in that, and the strong winds are going to make it extremely difficult to fight that fire in the gorge, and they're going to continue these strong winds into Friday. So a couple of days on the way. I mean, really now through tomorrow morning is the best opportunity for the firefighters to really get a handle on this and do as much work as they can, which I'm sure they will. Okay, the good news about the change in the weather for us is that the smoke is going to get cleared out. This is our smoke model. It's all high-level smoke mainly. It's getting pushed away, though, as we see that change in the weather come later on during the week. Then, of course, 96 in Portland. We had record high temperatures in the valley today. Starting in Portland, we made it up to 98 degrees at the airport. Vancouver, 96. Eugene, nearly 100. Troutdale, 98 as well. So record highs up and down the I-5 corridor, Pat. And this is going to continue a little bit tomorrow. We're going to see things drop from the upper 90s to the low 90s as we go into tomorrow afternoon. So there's a little bit of improvement on the way there.
All right, Matt, so quick question going back to that Underwood area,
yes,
where the wind's going to start howling. I mean, that sounds like a real problem.
I really think it will be. And I was talking about this yesterday going, boy, I hope they can get a lot of work done today because the winds have been calm. They're still calm now, but by tomorrow, those are strong winds. The gorge is famous for its strong winds. The windsurfers and the kiteboarders love it, and it's going to be a great pattern for them. But boy, it's going to push and work on that fire in a very large way. So that is going to be pretty difficult for the firefighters to contend with as we go through it. We'll be cooler, still near 90 tomorrow, but then much cooler for the weekend in the 80s. And again, no rain other than coastal drizzle. And of course, that doesn't really matter when you're talking about a fire out in the gorge.
All right, so another question. Yesterday was the hottest day on this planet ever, as far as we know. What's up with that? Is this global warming coming to rest with all of us?
Well, global warming has a footprint or fingerprints on our weather nearly every single day to varying degrees. Keep in mind, this is preliminary data from the University of Maine, so it needs to be verified, and the science and the research will continue to do that. But this is what we expect. And the Earth is basically now, our average temperature is about 2 degrees warmer than the 1880 to 1910 baseline. And here's what happens when you change. You may think 2 degrees, what's the big deal, right? Well, look at this bell curve and focus on this one here. We'll get to this one in a second. Most of our weather occurs in the big fat part of the bell curve. If you know any statistics, you know how that works. And the extremes are less likely. Cold extremes here, hot extremes here. But look what happens if you just shift it a little bit, a small change in the average, which is what this means. The average weather, you know, there's still a big overlap, doesn't change all that much. But the extremes change in a huge way. That means our extremes are now much hotter than they used to be in the old climate. They may not happen all that frequently, but they're going to be worse than they were. They're going to be hotter than they were. We're going to see far fewer extreme lows, and that's been the case over the last 10, 20 years. So, yeah, hottest day on record yesterday being reported by the University of Maine. We're likely going to see more of those in the years to come.
Wow, super interesting. I love when you really go deep and nerd out on this stuff. One final question, yes, going back to the fire weather. Am I right in thinking that the wind is following low pressure? So it's going from high pressure to low pressure?
Exactly. That's exactly how and why wind blows. And so what's happening now is we're going to see with the cooler air on the west side, That increases the pressure because cooler air is more dense. So we'll have higher pressure on the west side. The heat low, as we call it, which is where the hottest air is, which has been kind of hovering around western Oregon. It's kind of a widespread area this time around. That's going to shift east of the Cascades, and the wind will do exactly what you said. Follow the pressure from high to low, right? And then it's enhanced, of course, by the terrain in the gorge, which is what makes the gorge so special.
Yeah. All right. Always a treat to have you on, Matt. Thank you so much. Still ahead, we're checking out the Equator. It's a ship in the Seattle area that dates back to the late 1800s. At this point, its days on the high seas are, well, let's say over. But researchers are learning a lot from what's left of it. We'll show you when the story returns.
Coming up at 6:30, a frightening situation at a fireworks show in Milwaukee when a stranger grabs a 3-year-old boy, how his father's quick action stopped a kidnapping. Plus, a Beaverton family devastated when the father of 5 dies in a tragic fall at Multnomah Falls, what his family believes may have led to the accident. And a very busy night for firefighters in the Portland metro area, with fireworks sparking numerous fires, including a house fire in Clark County. We hear from a teen who helped save a woman and her cats. Those stories and more coming up next on KGW.
Now to an update on a story that had you fired up, lots of you. Portland's long-awaited safe park site for RVs. It's been ready to go, but vacant since November. We recently got a tour of the Sunderland RV Safe Park that's out by the airport in Northeast Portland. It's opening soon. The city says it will be just a couple more weeks now. You may remember this has been in the works for years, and it'll be the first of its kind in the Rose City. So why the months-long delay to get it open? Well, contract talks between the city and the Salvation Army, who will run the site.
Probably the easiest part of this project is just finding the dirt. The complex part is chatting about all of the issues surrounding pulling, dragging, towing RV units onto the site and how you're going to deal with all of the complex issues that come with substandard RVs.
55 spots.
There are 55 spots for RVs and vehicles, along with bathrooms, showers, and kitchenette facilities. People who are homeless and living in RVs cannot just show up to the park there. The city says outreach workers are starting to talk to people on nearby Northeast 33rd and then will move to other parts of the county.
Increasingly, we have better information about who is willing and ready to receive services and move forward in life. So that's a part of the criteria. In this case, obviously, there's many in RVs nearby, and that will be filtered into the whole criteria.
And we really need some time to get to know each and every person that comes to us so that we understand what challenges that they've survived, what challenges there are to future success.
We'll let you know how that one goes. A piece of Northwest history is set to be torn apart in the state of Washington. A 19th century boat, once chartered by a world-renowned writer, has been crumbling on the Everett waterfront for decades. Now, archaeologists have quite a unique opportunity and are working to preserve its legacy before it's lost to time. Here's Eric Wilkinson from our sister station King 5 in Seattle to bring us the rich history of the vessel called the Equator.
The Equator dates back to 1888. It sat here on the Everett waterfront in dry dock since the 1960s. A few years ago, the stern collapsed, and the Port of Everett determined that this ship's days were sunk.
56.5.
Archaeologists from Texas A&M University meticulously measure every inch of the Equator.
So you're at 13 now?
The 135-year-old ship was originally a schooner, once chartered by Treasure Island author Robert Louis Stevenson. It was later converted to a tugboat that worked in Puget Sound until being scuttled along the Everett waterfront. A group later raised the Equator, planning to restore it, but it simply sat dilapidated and decaying for nearly 60 more years.
Preservation is no longer an option.
Its beams bulging and bowing, if the ship could make a sound, it would probably groan. The Equator is essentially a shipwreck on dry land, but researchers say its current condition is actually a good thing.
This is amazing information for us to have, this framing system that creates that backbone of the ship.
Because it's falling apart, they can see the boat's bones and its guts. Researchers are taking such exacting care in their measurements, they say they'd be able to actually build an exact replica of the boat.
I'm making note that our x-axis is in decimals.
Instead, it'll be scrapped. Parts will likely be used in public art. The Equator's sailing days done, but its history will live.
Of course, wooden vessels aren't intended to live forever, and so we're at that point right now where we want to make sure her legacy lives on and her story can be told.
It wasn't just a ship, it was the people on board and the different industries it was involved with.
Love when people dig into history like that. That was Eric Wilkinson reporting. And that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. But remember, the story, our story, that never ends. Stick around for the news at 6:30 now, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.